Welcome to My Watches with Ben. If you've been following my channel, you know this has been coming for a while. Today's video is a preview of the upcoming traditional field watch series. If you haven't seen any of my watch type best of videos before, what I do is I meticulously gather the specs and features of a large number of watches, elements such as thickness, size, weight, water resistance, case material, dial format, etc. And I assign numerical penalties or bonuses for all these different things based on their suitability for a particular purpose. The end result is really effective at identifying the highest quality offerings on the market right now. I always find some sleepers, and that's true in this series too. There's definitely some sleepers, but this is the preview. The main purpose is to cover the scoring system, but I've got a bonus for you. I will cover the top 5 traditional field watches under $80. So stay tuned for that, or skip ahead if you're short on time. The first video I made in this type of format, analyzing watch types and doing a scoring system and stuff, was on field watches. I did that a year and a half ago. Here I am, a year and a half later, revisiting the topic. Since then, I've refined the scoring system a lot to include things like weight, thickness, movement quality, resistance to magnetism, brand strength. All that stuff is now built into the scoring system where it wasn't before. Also, the market has changed. There's different watches on the market. Some watches have been discontinued, and there's some really cool new watches that have been introduced. So I'm revisiting it now. It's a traditional field watch series. Here's the planned timeline. Tentative timeline for the traditional field watch project. Video releases. Got the scoring system today. Well, it's, I don't think it's the 9th, whatever today is. That's what this is. Start off with this preview video, and then I'm going to do the different price categories. So affordable, under 180, quality, 180 to 375, that sort of thing. I might double up some of these price ranges just to get the videos out a little faster, but we'll see. Then I always like to do an omissions video, because every one of these videos I do, people respond that, oh, you missed that, you missed this. And so I want to make sure that when I do the final top 10 of all price categories, tentatively scheduled for December 4th, when I do that, I will have all the watches. I will include the ones that people identify. So please, throughout this series, as these videos come out, if there's a watch you know of, just let me know, and it will be included. Want to make sure I get them all. This series, Traditional Field Watches, is the third in a 3-part mega exploration of field watches as a whole. Since I did that video a year and a half ago, I realized there's different types. You've got your Rolex Explorer, then you have these really traditional ones. Then you have the Casio G-Shock. People consider that a field watch too. How do they all fit together? Well, I've got a slide for that. Here's that slide showing a Venn diagram here, where they kind of overlap and where they don't. Today's traditional. Looking at traditional, I've already done the modern field watch series. I was calling it military field watches. I also called it technical at one point, but it's basically just digital watches. The Gata watches, go anywhere, do anything. These are the ones that you can take to your job interview, the graduation, the wedding. They're very suitable for that. They look sophisticated, but they're also rugged simultaneously. Today is traditional. It's going to be like World War II, World War I, retro, vintage, suitable for field hiking, maybe even construction and military. But they're not so suitable for your job interview. They're a little bit rough, but that's what we're going to go over today. I'll go over the philosophy a little bit more in that first price category. Speaking of the price categories, here's what we have to look forward to in the next few videos. The affordable price range, under 180. I set the price ranges so that there'd be roughly 70 watches in each one. This price range, there's going to be a lot of Chinese watches, this Redune, the Beaudary, things like that. But then there's also some fancier watches like this KHS. It's kind of near the top. I think that's 175 bucks. Bertucci A2 SEL, that's in this price range. Cestrian, the Loris Lumi Bright everybody likes. Next price range will be quality. Move my face a little bit out of the way so you can see some of this stuff a little better. More Bertucci. Bertucci's kind of in all 3 of the bottom price ranges. But Armorlight, Sterling, Redwood, Marathon, RZE, LL Bean, Citizen. See lots of those in this quality price range. Next will be premium. Fancier offerings from Marathon. This Techne. Oh man, I have to figure out how to pronounce that so I don't sound like an idiot. Cincinnati. This earthen ceramic white field watch. Very interesting. Dryden. Mixing the Tudor Ranger with the Hamilton khaki field. Draken, Hamilton. Hamilton is a big player in field watches, as everybody knows. Woolbrook, really cool ones in premium. And then we have the top tier. Top tier has a lot of interesting things. The Vice, people love that Vice. Hanhart, Hamilton again. Colorado Watch Company, that's definitely a new offering since I last looked at field watches. Studio Underdog, Vair, Formex, cool ones. I can't remember if the Rolex Explorer is in this series. It won't score well if it is, because I'm looking for the traditional thing. But yeah, like I said, the main purpose of today's video is just to show you the scoring system. But before I get into that, I've got a bonus for you. It's the top 5 traditional field watches under $80. Fifth place in the under $80 thing is the Loris Lumibrite. Only 67 bucks. It's very thin. It's a nice size. 37 millimeters is actually really nice for a field watch. The size is smaller on traditional field watches. The coolest thing about this is the lume. It's got fantastic full lume. I really like the black hands. Y'all know I'm a fanatic for black hands on a light dial. I think that looks so cool. When you have full lume, there's no downside. Not the strongest contender, but it made the top 5 under $80. If your price range is low, definitely consider the Loris. Fourth place is the Cooper Pathfinder. 76 bucks. Kind of an interesting dial layout with these little triangles here. I really like that. Got these crown guards, that's really nice. The Lumibrite also had crown guards. Very traditional looking case, very simple looking. Quartz is robust, that scores well. There's no date on it. It's definitely a step up from the Lumibrite if you're going traditional. It's more traditional than that Loris. The lume is really good on this one too. That's definitely a highlight. 38 millimeters, only 10 thick. Good option. It'd be nicer if they screwed down the crown. That would help the score. That would push it up to a B plus from just a B. The dial's missing some of the numbers. That's one of the things that holds it back. Not great brand strength either. Total score of 85 on my scoring system. And in third place is the Timex Expedition Camper. Only 53 bucks. Again, 38 millimeters. These are great sizes. 10.5. Take my word for it. It's nice to have a small field watch. That's really the traditional thing. Some watches are supposed to be big. Field watches traditionally are supposed to be smaller. This one actually has a backlight with that Indiglow, and it has loomed hour and minute hands. That's really nice. Has recessed crystal. It's going to be super light. I'm estimating 35 to 43 grams. That's going to be awesome. That's one big benefit to a plastic watch. It loses tensile strength here, and when I go over the scoring system, you'll see there's a balance. That was my number 3. Number 2 is the Militato ML08 Murph. Yes, it's a homage of the Hamilton Murph, although they put the British broad arrow on here. Hamilton doesn't do that. 69 bucks only, 38 across, 10.2 thick. Militato is one to keep an eye on for sure. You'll see when I do the bottom price tier, Militato performs very well. No date complication. Yeah, it's looking good. Lume is decent, not fantastic. There's no second lume. That's a downside. Good looking strap, score of 87. The number 1 traditional field watch you can get under 80 bucks, in my opinion, is the Militato ML05. 49 bucks, very cheap. It's under 50. 38 across, only 10.1 thick, very thin. It is a quartz watch. I think quartz is the way to go. I really do. I am wearing a quartz field watch on my wrist. Quartz is really nice. There's a lot of benefits to quartz, which I'll cover later in this video. Lume is a downside though. They could definitely get the score higher if they loomed the numbers. That would be nice. But it's passable. This top triangle's a little bit bigger. Well, this one is too. I guess all the quadrants are a little bit bigger. That'll help you get your orientation in the dark. But they did it right. There's no date complication. It's just very simple. That's the ethos of the traditional field watch. It's just a very simple, military-looking, vintage-style watch that's rugged. And this one's going to be pretty darn rugged. No brand strength with Militato. It's got a great vibe to it, though, traditional vibe. That's my number 1, under 80 bucks. Now we're going to go to that scoring system. That's kind of the main reason for the video. It just helps the first video to be more reasonable length. I could just point people over to this one if they're interested in the scoring system. I include all this because some of you really want to know how I calculate the score. And in this segment, I will cover all the pieces that go into the scores. Let's dive in. here's that scoring system. Okay, before I show you the scoring system, it's funny how my transitions are, isn't it? I'll show you how the watch is scored in all the price ranges. As I mentioned, it's on a 100-point scale, so they get points based on all those specs that I put in. And how it turned out very well. I have to tune the system to get this kind of results so that it makes logical sense. But 34% are in a good grade, A plus down to B minus. 30% are in the okay grade, C plus or C. And then 36% are C minus or lower. I don't recommend those ones. You can see the different price ranges kind of look a different way. Green is the best. You can see the quality price range. That's 180 to 375. That's the best price range to buy a traditional field watch in, just in terms of you're going to find the largest number of good grade traditional field watches. Affordable is pretty darn good too. I think premium paradoxically is the worst. That's $375 to $900. And obviously this is influenced by what I include in the video. I really did exclude a lot of the types of watches I had in the past. I wasn't trying to get every field watch that exists. I'm trying to get every traditional field watch that exists. There's a few that are kind of non-traditional that are thrown in there just to show, why they're not great. We're going to go through the scorecard using the Ver C3 Korean Field Solar. So this is its actual scorecard. It shouldn't change between now and the real video. There might be some weird reason I have to, but hopefully not. So this is the score. It gets a 94. Very high score for this Ver C3 Korean Field. It's one of the best options for sure. So I'll start with this metal here. The top 5 from every price range are automatically going to go to the final runoff, but I'm going to select wildcards as well. And when I do, they'll have this little medal to show you those ones are going to be in the final runoff for the top 10. But yeah, at the top of the scorecard, we've got colors. What colors are available? This one only has black available, but if there's other colors, there'll be little boxes here for that. The price, the width, the thickness, those all appear at the top of the card. And then we have all these other things. We have protection, utility, practicality, and subjective. And those are allocated in this particular video. 40% for protection, 30% for utility, 20% for practicality, 10% for subjective factors. And I'll go through each of these lines. All right, so the first line is water resistance and whether the crown screws down or not. So here's how I scored water resistance. If it has a water resistance rating of 100 meters, it's just a 0. No penalty. So you can actually get perfect protection score with 100 meters water resistance. But there's bonuses when it starts to go higher. 200, 300 get 2 points. 1,000 gets even more. You see there's only a couple that are 1,000 or 3,000. Almost half the watches have 100 meters water resistance. Most of the watches have 100 or plus. That's good. You want high water resistance on your field watch because you're going to be taking it outside. You might have to dive in the river to protect yourself from predator or whatever I said in that last video. The crown is one of the most vulnerable spots of the watch because if you hit it into something, it can bend and damage the movement inside. You can just brick your watch basically with the crown. So a screw down crown really helps because then the stress isn't on the movement, the stress is on the case because it's screwed into the case. The case can absorb the impact. So that's really nice. I only gave it a -3 penalty on this one. Part of that is because with traditional field watches, I wanted to make hand winding a little bit more viable, and hand winding watches don't screw down traditionally because that puts a lot of stress on the hand winding mechanism. People end up over winding their watch. So you wind it up to full and then you have to screw it down, it's going to wind it a little more. So usually hand winding watches don't screw down. But a little bit over half have push-pull crown and get that -3. The best watches, of course, will have the screw-down crown. Second line, the case material and whether or not it has crown guards. Case material, overwhelmingly, 60% is steel. Just 316L stainless steel. There's actually a lot of titanium here. PVD steel is another one. So all told, steel is actually 74% of the watches. Titanium's only 13%, but we've got a lot of other materials in here too. And here's how they score. So their tensile strengths are just based on their, I think the shear strength. I just did a range from -5 up to 2, with steel being the standard, the steel's tensile strength kind of just getting neutral. Crown guards are awesome. They also protect. That's double protection for that crown. If you have crown guards and screw down. And most of the watches don't have crown guards. The crown guards do take away from that traditional look a little bit, but they offer more protection. If they lack crown guards, it's just a -2. There's only one that has the crown guard and cover. Can't even remember what that is, but we'll see later. All right, the third line is how the strap attaches to the watch, whether there's anti-magnetism or not, and if it has anti-shock. So lug bar situation, most of them, 88%, have spring bars. But some watches, including the one I'm wearing, have more of a permanent lug bar, where the only option is to use a pass-through strap. You can't use a two-piece strap with those watches. That's much better. And here it's kind of just a bonus. Well, spring bars is a -1, and then fixed lugs is 2 points. Screw bar is really nice because you can actually use a two-piece strap if you really want to, but it's a very robust strap attachment mechanism. It's not going to fail with these screw bars, not as easily as spring bars. And I mentioned in the past, I literally have had a watch come off. I was moving some boxes and my watch caught on something and just popped right off. The spring bar popped right off and the watch fell to the ground. Not good. Especially, I think it was in the grass. I think I just lost that spring bar and I had to find another one at home. And that was a two-piece strap. You know, people say, oh, the NATO increases the stress on the spring bar. Yeah, I guess. You know, maybe there's some truth to that. But you can still have your watch pop off with a two-piece strap and spring bars because the spring bars aren't very robust. And this shock one right here, quartz watches by their very nature are way more resistant to shock than any automatic watch. And so all quartz watches get the anti-shock bonus. There are some automatic watches that get the anti-shock bonus as well if they have a suspension system protecting that movement. Ball is really good about that, for example. Magnetism. Most of the watches don't have any magnetic protection. Some of them have a Faraday cage that gets a +2. Okay, so if there's no magnetism protection, it's a -1. If the case is a material other than steel, I give it a bonus here. Steel is the only material that's going to be magnetized. Your titanium won't be magnetized. And I know that 316L is a little bit more magnetism resistant than other types of steel, but still, steel can get magnetized. Some automatic movements have things inside them, like a silicon balance spring, for example, is incredibly anti-magnetic. That's really good protection. Some of these have a Faraday cage. People have pointed out, and this is totally true, that quartz watches are susceptible to being magnetized, and that can cause problems. There are very few quartz watches that have a Faraday cage, but obviously they get the bonus. All right, the next line, the crystal. This is all just crystal. So let's check that out. So crystal material is right here. Acrylic, mineral, etc. Most of the watches have sapphire. That's the way of the world right now. 70% have sapphire. Sapphire is actually more prone to cracking than mineral glass or acrylic. And I have actually cracked an acrylic crystal, but from everything I've been able to gather, sapphire is more prone to cracking. I think we've all experienced that with the cell phones. Yes, it's scratch resistant. Scratching is not as big of a concern with the field watch. If you have a few scratches on that, it's just got a little more character, you know? You can still read the time. Not a huge deal. But of course, these aren't gigantic penalties or bonuses. It's only a -2. It's amazing. Even these tiny little penalties, they all add up to where there's a lot of watches that I just can't even recommend because all this stuff adds up. The other thing I look at with crystals is whether it sticks out or is recessed. The watch on my wrist has a crystal that sticks out. If I hit the watch into something, the crystal is going to take the brunt of that. On this Bertucci right here, there's like 2 or 3 millimeters where the crystal is below the bezel. And so if I hit this into something, the bezel's going to take the impact rather than the crystal. That's excellent. So that gets 2 points over the protruding crystal. So we finished protection. This Vare C3 had a protection score of 36 out of 40. Pretty good. All right, now we're in utility. Utility, how easy is the watch to use? This has great utility, but we'll go through the different lines. The first one is the numbers. It's a huge thing with field watches. You want numbers on it. That's one of the distinguishing characteristics of a field watch, or just a tool watch in general. You want the time to be easy to read on these analog watches. And actually, I haven't mentioned this yet, but this video is nearly exclusively analog watches. There is one digital watch that I included. I only included it because it has 0 complications, like literally none. It is a time-only digital watch. That's the only reason I let it in. Otherwise, all the watches are just going to be 3-handers. And you want to be able to see these Arabics. Standard Arabics just means you get 1 through 12. Military Arabics is when you get 1 through 12 and 13 through 24. So this missed the mark a little bit there. That's actually a pretty big deal. Military Arabics is the ideal, so that gets a 0. Standard Arabics gets a -2. So that Ver lost a couple points for having standard Arabics. And I have examples here to show what I mean by these terms here. Some batons is like this notice sector here. Our batons only, those do horribly, -10, like the citizen. Roman numerals, it's better than nothing, but it's still not ideal for a field watch. Partial 1 through 24 is like here with the Damasco. You've got some standard numbers, just 369. You've got some military numbers. It's incomplete. They're trying to get fancy, so that lost a few points. Not crazy. Damasco still has a chance for sure. And then I also look at whether there's minute Arabics. Citizen, for example, has minute Arabics here. This Thai Solar Field Watch has some minute Arabics here. All right, the next line is contrast and minute markings. I'll tell you what I mean in a second. This slide just shows the values. So high contrast is like light colors on a black background or dark colors on a light background. And the hands also being a contrast, light hands on a dark background. This is high contrast. Sometimes you'll have a light dial with light silver hands. That's low contrast, especially when the numbers are also light. So we've got high, low, and medium. Medium would be like the hands are dark, but the numbers are light, and it's a light dial, something like that. Minute marks. Minute marks are awesome. If it has no minute marks, it's a -5. Minute marks are these little hashes. So if you just had the numbers and no little lines, that's bad. It's hard to tell in between, 10 and 15, what is it if there's no marks whatsoever. All right, and now we're on to loom. Here's the Ver's loom. It's above average loom for sure. Here are the values I assigned. I'll make my face a little smaller. These are all out of order in this table on the right. But here's some examples on the screen. This first one, that's full loom. Full loom gets a +1. Backlight gets a +1, like this. It's one I have in my hot hands. Tons of tritium tubes, like a lot of tritium tubes, actually gets a +2. This one right here has loom chapter. That gets a 1. It's really easy to tell in the dark exactly what time it is. If you have Arabics and index marks and the second hand, all the hands, it's a 0. That's kind of the standard. This one also gets a 0. If it's missing the second hand, like this KHS here, but it's otherwise really good, it's a -1. If it has no Arabics and no second, -3. Loomed hands only is -4. No loom whatsoever is a -5. Not huge points we're dealing with, but it does help to sort all these watches, figure out what's the best. The next line is date complication. No date is the best. Oh, and bezel is in here too, if it has some kind of fancy bezel. So let's do date complication first. Most of the watches have a no date. That's great. That's what you want for a traditional field watch. The date clutters up the dial. You want it to be simple, clean. If it does have a date, it's only a -2. Day date, -3. Color match gets you a little bit better, but here's how all that broke out. The bezel. Most of these, 97% have a fixed bezel. I really was not trying to include, there's no elapsed timing bezels or countdown timing bezels. I just didn't include those. I don't think those are traditional. Really trying to focus this more narrowly, this particular video series. So fixed bezel is mostly what these are. There's a couple with rubber bezels. There's one with a timing marker. Maybe it's that tie. Compass bezel, I decided to allow compass bezel. I thought that was okay. There's only a few of those though. The last line of utility is printing versus applied and whether there are other complications. So printing versus applied, the problem with applied indices is they fall off. Recently returned a watch because it came and one of the indexes was not attached. So it definitely happens. The applied indices come off. They're just glued on so the glue can fail. Or they didn't put enough glue or whatever it is. That's a hazard with applied indices. We're talking about a tool watch. Printing is better than applied. Yes, applied looks fancy. In the Gotta Watch video, Go Anywhere, Do Anything, this was exactly the reverse because applied looks fancier. You're going for sophistication with the Gotta Watch. This one's the tool one. You need it not to fail. So yeah, applied indices get a -2. And the deal with the complications, there are so many complications. I did all these scores together. So the modern military field watches have a bajillion complications. The altimeter, barometer, compass, temperature, stopwatches, timers, alarms. The bottom line is complications are not good on a traditional field watch. You don't really want any complications. There are a couple complications that I thought were good for traditional field watch. But I'm not going to go through all of them because there are so many. But that will be obvious as we go through the video. All right, we're done with utility, down to practicality. How the watch wears, what it's like to actually have it. So the first one is the weight, just the weight of the watch. Okay, so that crazy screen. I think this is all still true. I think this is still how I'm approximating weight. The basic calculation is the case weight equals the volume times the density. That's what weight is, volume times density. So I take the case weight and I add the strap weight and I get the approximate weight. And when I say case weight, I mean with the movement in and everything. Because something that's not shown on this chart is the movements all have a weight to them. I weighed movements. I got out my little scale, weighed an automatic movement versus a quartz movement. The straps have weight. Average bracelet is like 80 grams on its own. These all go into that. The density is based on grams divided by centimeters cubed. I use these calculations here, the density of titanium times the approximate volume. And the volume is pi r squared minus pi half r. And that's so I didn't just do a circle. I took out a little bit and I tweaked this. This isn't the exact calculation I have. I tweaked it until it matched the actual numbers. So I would find watches that have a listed weight. I would take watches that I own and weigh them. And there is a little bit of variability to this. So I showed the approximate weight, if it's an approximate, as a range. Because as I did this, I'd take a few different watches, plug in my calculation versus the actual weight. There'd be a little bit of deviation because watches are not the exact same shape. Some of them have beefier lugs and stuff. That's really difficult to factor in when all you have is the case diameter and the thickness and the crystal height, approximate crystal height. And ignore this here. I'll show you the real score. If they list the weight, I just use listed weight. But if not, I have to approximate. And most of the watches I have to approximate. But here's the weights, how they turned out in the actual total population. The tallest spike here is between 70 and 90 grams, 40-something%. The baseline is kind of this 51 grams in terms of whether it gets a penalty or bonus. Gets a bonus below this like 60 grams, gets penalties above it. Penalties 70 grams and above. A little bit, just a point every 20 grams. So that's the weight. A few of these watches are very heavy, usually because they have a bracelet, and so those get a big penalty. 4, 5, 6 point penalty. Size, thickness, and diameter. These are mostly just taken from the spec sheet. I didn't have the watches in hand to actually measure them, so I have to rely on the spec sheet. I know sometimes spec sheets are wrong, but usually they're right, in my experience, with all the watches I've purchased. So the diameter, the golden window is 36 millimeters to 39 for traditional field watch. If you're in that window, there's no penalty. That's kind of the baseline. But then there's penalties on either side of this. 34, that's not the end of the world. A 34 millimeter watch is very traditional. Not a huge penalty. When you start getting into 46, 47, 45s, these are way too big for a traditional field watch, so they get a big penalty. Thickness, I set the baseline at 11. You get penalties above 11 millimeters. You get bonuses going below 11 millimeters. It's really nice if it's thin, and that's rewarded. There's a couple 7 millimeter thin watches. Those get a 3-point bonus. It's really nice. Strap is the next one. And it's under practicality. With traditional field watch, it really is a practical matter what the strap is made of. NATO strap, Zulu, these pass-throughs, those are the baseline for field watch. That's what you want. If there's some sort of failure, if your spring bar pops off, you don't lose the watch with the pass-through because it goes through both lugs. It just ends up flopping around, but you don't lose the watch, and that's really nice. It doesn't fall off the cliff or into the river or whatever, fall on the ground and break. It's better if it has the NATO strap. That's what they designed it for. These two pieces all kind of just get a -5. Resin or silicone, that's really not very traditional, like it's -6. Bracelets are no good. If it has a diverse extension, it gets a -7. Steel mesh is the same story. If they don't have extensions, -8. Jubilee bracelet is the wrong style. I don't even know if there are any in here, but -9. That's not what you want on a traditional field watch. That's not the traditional choice for field watch. Maybe you like a Jubilee bracelet, but that's not what we're going for with this watch category. All right, movement is the next one. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the movement. So I decided to put some different examples in here on this chart so you can kind of see what's the best, what's the worst, because I factor in accuracy, quality, power reserve is this says typical power reserve, but it's actually what it says if there are automatic movements. Battery change or not. If you don't have to change the battery, that's +2. Solar quartz is definitely the best. So yeah, when you factor all these things in, the accuracy, the quality, here's what you get. I don't think there's any Bluetooth quartz ones in this series, but yeah, regular quartz is a -2, thermo quartz is a 0, stuff like that. Mechanical watch, automatic or hand winding, that's a chronometer, is a -1. Still not as good as a quartz. Well, actually, I put the mechanical chronometer over the quartz in this video. Again, I was trying to balance it a little bit better this time, because mechanical watches on a traditional field watch, yes, it is more traditional. Quartz performs better, it just does, but mechanical is more traditional. So I didn't want it to be such a wide gap between them. But you take your standard Seiko NH35, that's a -4 penalty. Well, on top of that, it's going to have no shock resistance. So that's actually a -6. Quartz would have a -2. So 4-point difference between your Seiko NH35 versus just a standard quartz. Quartz is better, for sure. All right, now we're down to subjective. Last 2 lines. First one is brand strength. And I just take it from watch charts. There's 4 points allocated to this if it has a 9 or a 10. And what I did is I took all the named brands in watchcharts.com, and they're in order from popularity. Watchcharts.com monitors primary and secondary markets to determine which watches have the most sales, which have the most hype. Timex, Rolex, these will be really high on watch charts. Other brands, micro brands, will be really low, or they won't even be on watch charts. So they'll get a 1 or a 2. These are how the 4 points are allocated. Very clean when you have 4. It's easy to divide 10 by 5 because I'm including the 0. Traditional vibe, it's subjective. It's a subjective category. 6 points are allocated to this. And I'll show you how I do that, but here's how it works out. I made a formula for this, and this is just how it worked with the rounding. 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 6 for the score out of 10. Let me get my face out of the way. Here's how I evaluated the traditional field watch aesthetics. I'm going to take you through this. I think I've glossed over this in the past. The first thing I do is I decide whether it is a top traditional looking watch, whether it's a funky traditional watch or a modern traditional watch. Rugged, modern, clean field plain. These were things that made sense in my brain. Everyday plain, fancy, modern, and weird. That gets it kind of a base score out of 10. And then there's 3 bonuses to add on top. It has 24 markings, it's a +1. If it has really great finishing, it's a +1. If it's vintage or fresh, also a +1. It's a methodical system for scoring these watches on their aesthetics. I mean, clearly, if you look at the one in 10th place, that makes sense. You look at the one in first with a point of 1, this wrist is not traditional whatsoever. So it's weird. It's a weird watch. Didn't think it had good finishing, doesn't have the 24s. It's not vintage or fresh, in my opinion. It's just kind of bland, weird looking watch. These numbers just indicate how many bonuses it got. So it helps me recreate, like, as I was scoring all the watches, I could look at one and be like, okay, here's one that looks just like it on this watch, the Sestrian. It looks just like that. And then I can realize, okay, so I decided that the Sestrian was a clean field plain. It's just kind of a clean field watch. Doesn't look particularly military. It's kind of a fancy one, to be honest. And it got 2 points. It got a bonus for 24 markings, 24-hour markings. Got a bonus for the finishing. So that's how that one went in there. The 511, for example, 511 I called a rugged modern. It's kind of a rugged modern take on a field watch. And it only got 1 bonus for the 24-hour markings. I don't think it's particularly fresh. I don't think it has good finishing. Smith's, it's a clean field plain because it's missing numbers. It's kind of fancy. It got a bonus for the finishing. It's bull of a hack watch. It's a top traditional looking watch, and it gets all 3 bonuses. Hopefully that makes sense to people. I don't know. It's a window into my mind, I suppose. So that was my rundown of the scoring system. This is the traditional field watch series preview. With God's help, I'll be able to get the next one out a week from now. We'll see if that actually happens. Try to get it out by the 16th. What is the 16th? Yeah, today is the 9th. So this one's coming out on the 10th. Next one will probably come out like on the 18th, Saturday. We'll see. But it'll be the price range I'm calling affordable. So look forward to that a week from today, hopefully. If you've watched my videos before, you know that after I talk about the watches, I like to talk about the Bible. So that's what I'm going to do now. It's Bible time. I actually have a Bible Time YouTube channel where I just post these endings, and they're all up there. I'll put it in the description if you want to follow. If you want to subscribe, that would be awesome. But anyway, I'm not a pastor or a trained biblical scholar. I just love sharing a passage of the Bible with people. Today, I'm continuing the series on the Hebrews 11 Hall of Faith with named person number 11, Rahab. This is a really cool one. Rahab's great faith was instrumental in an amazing victory at Jericho, the walls of Jericho coming down. And Rahab is actually the direct ancestor of King David and Jesus. I'll show my work on that. Matthew 1, verses 5 through 6. It says, Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Talking about the genealogy of Jesus in Matthew. And it goes on to say, Jesse, the father of King David. And those who say, okay, this is just Joseph's genealogy. Well, Romans 1:3 states that Jesus was descended from David according to the flesh. It says, concerning the Son, who is descended from David according to the flesh. Jesus is descended from David. David is descended from Rahab. It's commonly understood Rahab is the ancestor of both King David and Jesus. The passage on Rahab that we're covering today is found in Hebrews 11, verse 31. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And this is closely linked to the previous verse, Hebrews 11:30. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. Now, Rahab wasn't in the army or anything, but as we'll see when we dive into her story, we'll see she was instrumental in all that being able to come to pass. And I didn't cover Joshua because he isn't named in that passage about Jericho. It just says, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell. Whose faith? Well, it's probably Joshua and the people, but I'll probably go through unnamed people that are just implied. I might do that with the Hebrews 11 Hall of Faith. If I do that, then Joshua will be in there. But he's not named in Hebrews 11. Rahab is, so we're doing Rahab today. The Hebrews 11 passage here about Rahab is recounting what happened in Joshua 2. And this is a long passage I'm going to read, but it's important to really understand Rahab's story. It's kind of the meat of what I'm covering today. So buckle up, get a beverage, as they say. The passage is Joshua 2, verses 1 through 22. And the Israelites were seeking to take Jericho from the Canaanites. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go, look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab. Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. She's sneaking around. So the king somehow knows that the men went into her house. You know, she's in the eye of the king, like he's commanding her to give them over, and she hid them from him. She lied to the king. She said, oh, they escaped. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies laid down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, so she went to talk to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you, because of the Israelites. For when you came out of Egypt and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. She's heard of the great works. She heard of God parting the Red Sea with Moses. Victories over other 2 powerful kings, Sihon and Og. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. She recognizes that the God they follow is the actual God of heaven and earth. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. So she's asking deliverance just not for herself, but her family and their families. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So Rahab and the Israelite spies, they all know. They know. They have faith. God will deliver the city to them. And Rahab is saying, when he does, please spare me and my family. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. She's actually on the city wall. She said to them, "Go to the hills so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go your way." She gave them critical information that allowed them to actually escape. Now the men had said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us, unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house." There's a lot of theological weight to that. I'll get into that a little bit later. They escaped Canaan with the scarlet cord, and she is to hang the scarlet cord from her window as a sign so that she will be saved. If any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads. They have to be protected by that scarlet cord. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear. So she has to be faithful to what she promised. There's so much theological meaning in here. Her family members have to be covered by that cord. They have to be in her house. There's no other path for salvation for them. Physical salvation. Agreed, she replied. Okay, covenant. Offer and acceptance. Contract. Let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed. And she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days, until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. They got away. She kept up her end of the bargain. Now it's their turn to keep up their end of the bargain. And they do that in Joshua 6, verse 17. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who were with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. So everybody knew about Rahab. They knew they had to protect her. And this story of Rahab was so important that it was referenced by Hebrews 11 that we started with. By that genealogy in Mark specifically mentioned Rahab. They didn't have to. They were just listing men. This guy, the son of this guy. And Mark specifically mentions whose mother was Rahab. They wanted to make that known. They wanted to honor her in the genealogy. And she's actually even mentioned by James. I'll read that passage. James 2, verse 25 through 26. In the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? As the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without deeds is dead. That's the famous part. Faith without works is dead. Specifically refers to Rahab. I did not realize this. Rahab's deeds, not just her faith in her heart, but her deeds. Clearly, Rahab is much commended by the Bible. She had assurance about what she did not see. Now it's in Joshua verses 10 and 11 that I read earlier. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear of the Lord, it's the beginning of wisdom, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. She didn't see these great works. She only heard about them. The same as we just hear about the gospel from the Bible. But she believed. Believing without seeing. Assurance about what she did not see. That Hebrews 11:1 definition of faith says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Perfect. Perfect example here with Rahab. She had faith about what she did not see. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, for we live by faith, not by sight. Our faith does not come from sight. We live by that faith in the unseen. In his commentary on the Hebrews 11:31, I believe, Gill says, talking about Rahab, he says, she believed that the God of the Israelites was God in heaven and on earth, that he had given the land of Canaan to them. She received the spies and hid them through that faith. She caused them to swear by the Lord that they would show mercy to her and her family, and gave credit to them and observed their instructions. She observed their instructions, just as we are to observe God's instructions to us. And so she perished not with them that believed not, the inhabitants of Jericho, who were unbelievers and disobedient. She lives with unbelievers who are disobedient, but she has faith in God. And all perished by the sword, but Rahab perished not, neither temporally nor eternally. The Bible says she's righteous. Her temporal salvation was an emblem and type of her spiritual salvation. The Bible is rich with this type of stuff. Her receiving of the spies was an emblem of the souls receiving the gospel. She received the spies, the souls received the gospel, and the ministers of it. The scarlet thread that was hung out was an emblem of the blood of Christ. Yes. by which all sins, though as scarlet, are made white as wool, and the saving of her whole family is an emblem of the complete salvation of all the elect, soul and body, by Christ. Her works of righteousness spilled over to all those around her. It wasn't just to her. And that blood of Christ, the scarlet thread, that covered her and her family, and they were saved. I'm not implying that just because I'm saved, my brother's also saved. They have to go into the house and be with her. They made that very clear, the Israelites did. If they're not in that house with you, if they're not covered by the blood of Jesus, they will not be saved. And you can't fault the Israelites for killing them by the sword. That's the only way that the Israelites would know that these people are saved. That's the only way God knows that we're saved. That's the only way we are saved, is by that scarlet cord. Rahab declared that Yahweh is the God of heaven and earth. That's in verse 11. So she turned on her people, the world. She turned on the Canaanites and joined the winning side. She noticed God's power, his awesome power. She feared him and she joined him. She knew he was God of heaven and earth. This is what Jesus calls us to do as well, to reject what the world is saying, follow him. Luke 14, verses 26 through 27. If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Jesus wants us to leave the world and join him, to leave our culture, to leave those Canaanites, those unbelievers, and to follow him. That doesn't mean we despise them. Hate in a biblical context, as I've said before, it does not mean despise. It means separation. Hate means love less. We love God the most. We have to leave the world in order to be with him. We can only be saved if we're in that room. Rahab's loyalty was to God and his people rather than her own Canaanite heritage. And as I established earlier, she was a direct ancestor of King David and Jesus. It's amazing how God works and how history is woven together so intricately in this way. Okay, so the primary points from the story, we're at the end here. Rahab's faith was not just a feeling, it guided her thoughts and actions. James specifically cited Rahab when he stated that faith without works is dead. NIV says deeds, but I've always heard it works. Faith without works is dead. She put that faith into action. And if she hadn't, none of this would have worked. That's an important lesson. People get caught up on the faith, sola fide. Well, faith without works is dead. If you have the opportunity for works and you're not doing it, is your faith real? That's the message of the Bible. Is your faith truly real if it doesn't come with deeds? So here's some points. Rahab, 1, walked by faith, not by sight, left her people to follow God. She left a legacy which was beyond her comprehension, being the ancestor of King David and Jesus. She was redeemed from her past sin through her faith. She was a prostitute. Nobody is beyond redemption. She exhibited faith not just by words, but by works that put her in great danger. You better believe the king, she was in grave danger by hiding those spies. Absolutely. There's so much we can learn from her story. And it's a beautiful emblem, as Gil mentioned, of the redeeming work of Christ. That's all I've got on Rahab. There's a deep well of wisdom to be found in her story and great encouragement for us sinners. We can be redeemed from our past and used by God for great things beyond our comprehension. Next week, I'll cover the next named person, Gideon. And now for a prayer. Lord, it's very inspiring to hear the story of Rahab and to see the beautiful pictures you put in there of our own salvation. And Lord, I pray that when the need arises, when your people are in need, that we would help them, that we would see the works that you are trying to do in the world, the works that you will succeed in doing with our help or without. And I pray that you would just give us the courage to stand up to the world and stand with you and see your glory as one standing on your side, knowing that we were a part of it. Lord, I love that you share your victories with us, that you work with us, that you partner with us. And to you be all the glory, Lord. Pray that you keep us safe, you keep our souls safe, protect us from spiritual attacks. Lord, I love you, and I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace always and in every way. The Lord be with you all. See you next time.